more than a decade, Saturdays and A Legal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The A Legal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all of those joining us live, wherever you're joining us live from on the universe, good morning to you as well. And welcome to the final Illegal Curve Hockey Show of 2022. No Drew, no Ezzy, Dave Minuk in the host chair, co-hosted by our good friend Jim Toth of CJOB. Jim, how you doing this morning? The final Saturday morning of 2022.
I thought without the other two staples of this show and me, when you said the final, I'm like, oh, this is the final show because I'm on it. So I'm glad it's just the final one of the year. More than a decade. Yeah. Congratulations, you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm good today. Feeling good. And for all the viewers and listeners, I apologize. It was my computer that wouldn't work for the 2 to 3 minutes that were tardy. So a lot of people out there will go, well, that's Toth, but I'm usually on time.
Hey, that's the beauty of technology. And that's the beauty of the technology we're on, Jim. We can go a few minutes late if we have to. We can cut it out early. It's all within our purview today. So we can do whatever we want to do today. No Drew, no Ezzy. The hats are on, but all hats are off when it comes to what the rules are for today's show.
Excellent. Yeah, I wore a toque today just because I'm in the basement, so a little chilly, but I'll make it through.
Well, I mean, Spencer's a little disappointed. You want to see your locks, the luxurious mane hair that you have, but that's okay.
Well, it is there. It's shorter now. Paul Edmonds was giving it to me at the game on Thursday. He's like, I don't know if I like this haircut of yours. And I said, well, Paul, if you don't, let me adjust it for you. But and then he asked me if I'm sprinkling the gray in on purpose. And I said, that's offensive, Paul. Let's start off 2023 in a better way.
Yeah. Don't end 2022 in a good way, Paul. Paul's usually a pretty even guy, but he was going after your hair. That's off limits, Jim, as far as I'm concerned. What's not off limits, and there's a ton to talk about. We've got obviously everything that's happening in Jets land, but it's the Jets are playing today, the Moose are playing today, the Ice are playing today, Canada is playing today, lots of Jets prospects are playing today. So there is a ton of things to talk about. Let's get into it, and let's talk first, of course, about the Jets' big win over the Vancouver Canucks on Thursday. It seemed like I wrote about it this morning on illegalcurve.com. I said it was like a pressure release valve being kind of exploded all of a sudden, because you could just see the Jets, the tension kind of, and again, it's one game, but they knew that they couldn't afford to allow this to become a 4-game losing streak. And really, especially against a tough Edmonton team, really have to end 2022 on a really sour note.
Well, and to be honest with you, Dave, like it is a big win, not just because of the 3-game losing streak, but in just the injuries. And I know we're going to get into that. And I just think they're in tough. Like I like the 3 games they played in that losing streak. I love their game in Boston. I thought if they were fully healthy, they could have won that game. I thought they could have won that game even with the roster they had. Washington, I thought they took some bad penalties, and that cost them in that game. And maybe they were running out of gas at the end of the road trip and heading into Christmas, or just the end of that long trip to the West Coast back and then to the East Coast. And then the third game of that, I like the way they played as well, but they just were depleted. So Vancouver, I was wondering about. They'd won 3 in a row. They're excellent on the road. The way Winnipeg handled them in Vancouver, I believe it was on the 17th or about a week and a half prior to that. I thought that the Vancouver Canucks would come out with a little bit more pride. And then with the way the game started in the first period, there's something about this team, and I know we're going to talk a lot about it, is there's not a lot of change on the ice, but there's something about the attitude with this team that Pierre-Luc Dubois in the first intermission on 680 CJOBR broadcast was quite unhappy and vocalized what they got to do better, and it's not acceptable how they played that period. And they came out and they got it done. So they talked the talk and they walked the walk this year. And I think last year there was a lot of talk and a lot of frustration about what wasn't going right on the ice. And this year they seem to have that je ne sais quoi of a team that is in the room. They can force themselves to do some things. And to me, it was a system win. This team under Rick Bowness is playing this different system. And the part about it that I like the most, Dave, is that they are doing it for extended periods of time throughout games. Prior to that Eastern Coast road trip, they won 2-1 in overtime against Nashville. They were down 1-0. but they didn't change the way they played. They didn't change their system. They didn't get individual. They didn't push even in the third period. There was a push in the third period to break that 1-1 tie, but they didn't get away from their game plan or what they were trying to do in order to get that win. They went to Vancouver and they were up 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, and didn't change the way they were playing and just dominated that game. I didn't think they had a good period on Thursday against the Canucks, but then the second and the third, they played their system. The forecheck worked. They took advantage and drew some penalties, and they enforced their will on the Vancouver Canucks. And again, I think that's impressive given that there's that many players, core players out of the lineup. I think Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Kuhlman could use some finishing. I mean,
yes,
they're not top 6 players.
I agree.
They gain opportunities. But my point to bringing those names up is that's what the Jets lack right now with the players that are in the lineup is some finish and some skill. Yeah. But I bring those 2 names up because those guys are waiver wire additions that are playing a system that is getting them opportunities. So I really thought that that's the key over this next 2 to 3 weeks. And even tonight is them sticking to the game plan and sticking to the system. That's the only way they're going to get wins. Defending, goaltending, and the system will do them well. If they try to score, if they try to get individual, and I know that sounds ridiculous if they try to score, but if they get freewheeling, if they try to roll skill, that's what's going to happen against like the Washington of that road trip. So I really like the fashion in which they won that game by sticking with it and doing what has gotten them success throughout this year, regardless of who's in the lineup.
Well, it's funny actually when you said that because it made me think of Pascal Vincent's, the former Moose bench boss's famous words, secret plays. When you start doing secret plays that nobody else on the ice is aware of what you're doing, it really changes the dynamic of the team. Yeah. And it seems like you're right. Like it seems like this team has bought in. I mean, one thing that they definitely need to work on in my mind is their starts in periods because especially and I understand the personnel are who the personnel are. And right now that's not going to change anytime soon. It doesn't appear, but it just seems like I can't tell you how many periods now in a row. It seems like at least 5 games where you're watching these hockey games and you're like, okay, the Jets have still not registered a shot. And, 10:39 into that game against the Canucks, they registered a shot that was probably going 4 feet over the net that Delia had to like really get his arm up in order to grab. And that was their first shot of the game. So I agree with you. They're not really, again, they're limited in terms of the personnel. And we know that. I mean, when you have the laundry list of injuries they have, when you have 4 forwards who are the only 4 forwards out of 12 who are making over $1 million, again, I'm all for guys who can come in and try and seize an opportunity, but that just shows there's a clear lack in the lineup in terms of, and it's exactly your point, Jim, because to me, the Kuhlmans and the Axel Jonsson-Fjällbys, you're asking them to do too much, right? Yeah. And so that's not their general role. And so look, I mean, Carson Kuhlman had what I'd say at least 2 grade A chances in that Canucks game where he shot the puck, nowhere really near the net. And again, you're asking a guy to really do more than he's not capable of, because obviously he can put the puck in the back of the net, but it's not his role generally. And so to me, that's the thing. You've got plug and play right now. You've got guys you're desperate to get into the system because you don't have any other opportunities. You don't have any other options, I should say, not opportunities. You don't have any other options. So you're getting these guys in and you're hoping, okay, we can tread water because right now the relief isn't in sight. We talk about the injuries. I mean, that doesn't appear to be changing. And the only way it changes is that the timeline changes from positive to not necessarily the best in terms of Saku Manalainen looked like he was the next forward up. And then suddenly now he's a little bit further behind. And that was just a 2-day break. I think it was the 27th was, he's a week away. And then by the 29th, he was in the third pairing behind Cole Perfetti and Nate Schmidt. And of course, the biggest unknown going back to that Thursday game was the status of Josh Morrissey, because, he obviously left the game, came back, sat on the bench, didn't feel right. We're not sure if that was precautionary or he just didn't feel 100%. So the team didn't want to take a risk. But the interesting thing for me, one, they're at the 23-man roster limit, so they can't really make a recall without moving a guy to IR. They still have Cole Perfetti on the roster, and they haven't moved him to IR, but they have no cap space. So even though they'd have to move someone to LTIR, which they could do, obviously, but it's just an interesting situation because there's no room. And so, just bringing it to the Moose last night, Jim, there were no recalls. All the Moose players, Declan Chisholm, Leon Gavanke, Simon Lundmark, all the Moose players who have NHL contracts, I should say, on D were still in the lineup. So it's not as if they're recalling someone. So we don't know if Kyle Capobianco is going to go in and Josh Morrissey is on the trip. We don't know the status because, of course, the Jets canceled practice yesterday. So how do you see that one playing out, given the fact that, again, Josh Morrissey is such an integral part, but the Jets don't really have the latitude to make a move?
Yeah, and I mean that $6 million went away real quick that they had space with at the start of the year, and that's why you have it like that. That's why the Toronto Maple Leafs have threatened themselves by playing down a forward in a game this year. Some other teams the same way. Vegas did that a couple times last year. So, look, Josh Morrissey is. I heard a post game on our station 2 nights ago with Christian O'Mell and Kelly Moore, and they listed 3 players that the Jets could no longer lose. And one was Connor Hellebuck, and 1A was Josh Morrissey. And then I think the second or third player in the top 3 that they cannot lose is Mark Scheifele. Well, these guys are injured. So, look, Josh Morrissey is having a phenomenal year. And I know they're calling him Josh Norrisy, and rightfully so, with the 42 points. He leads the team in 36 games. He's an assist-a-game player right now. But all that aside, he is having a phenomenal game in his own end. He is defending well. He's moving the puck well. He's being physical. They need him because part of this philosophy and this system that Rick Bowness has is 20 to 25 shots a night. They beat Vancouver and allowed 22 shots. He's integral to that. That's what's lost in this whole Norris Trophy talk with me and the points and the season Josh Morrissey's having is he's playing really well at both ends of the ice. And I think that he is. I mean, look, Connor Hellebuck's Connor Hellebuck, but who's the second MVP this year? And this is a good discussion because when seasons go well, you always have 5 candidates, and then it's a debate. It's like Mark Scheifele's having an outstanding year. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is having a really good season as well. So, but I think Josh Morrissey is integral to this team. I think his leadership, I think he's part of the guy that was integral in the transition from Blake Wheeler as captain and the stripping of it. We all know how close those two are. I think he's key to that. Adam Lowry's having a phenomenal year, but this is an injury that I think that so right now with the injuries, Dave, I think that, when they go in the Vancouver game, I was like, I think Vancouver could win this game. I'm iffy about this game. I think that the firepower they have, the Brock Bessers and the Elias Petterssons that they didn't have the last time they played in this lineup could really hurt and harm these Jets. So when they won that game based on the system and the way they played and the big guns stepped up, Morrissey is one of those. He had 2 assists. I don't think they can lose Josh Morrissey because then the next 2 to 3 weeks for me going, look, if they play the system, they hang in there and the big guns show up, they have a chance in every game. But the chance they would have against some of these teams like Vancouver or Edmonton tonight goes to me from like 65 to 70% to win a game because I think they're that good, go down to 50-50 or less. You take Josh Morrissey out of this lineup tonight, and I think you're in massive trouble against the Oilers, despite them playing last night. They put up 7 against Seattle. So I think he's integral to this team. I agree that there's 3 names on this roster that they cannot afford to lose over the next 2 to 3 weeks while the rest are gone. Yep. Even when Manalainen comes back in, I don't think they can lose Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey, but I would have Josh Morrissey up there. I really think he's next to Connor Hellebuck on the MVP of this team right now. So it's ominous. I know. I didn't like the way he left. Like I know you said it could have been precautionary. It was 3-2 at that time. If he could have played, Josh Morrissey would have played in a 3-2 game to help get that win. I think it was, he might play tonight, but he won't be at 100%. I think this is a little bit ominous because you and I both covered Josh Morrissey from the Moose days. Yep. I just think that he would have finished that game if he could have. I don't think it was precautionary. With a 3-2 score. So I really think he's having that good of a year and he's that important to this team on that back end. I don't think there's a more valuable defenseman on this team right now.
No. I mean, I don't think there's any question. I don't think anybody would question that. Ville Heinola had a pretty good game for the Jets, actually. So that's a good positive thing. And a lot of times we see that where, if a guy goes down, guys can step up and they especially defensemen seem to thrive with that opportunity to get a little more ice time in a game. And so
I was joking yesterday on Jets at Noon with the game Ville Heinola had because I thought it was his best game since the recall. But I said, if Josh Morrissey can't go and he's the guy that has to go up top, it's kind of like that scene in Platoon after the end of the movie Battle. Yeah. And what's that actor's name with the cigarette? And he's like, I made it. Oh my God, I made it. And the cat or the guy in charge comes around and he says, how you doing? He goes, I made it. I can't believe it. I feel, he goes, how you doing? He goes, I feel good. I feel good, Captain. He's like, good, because you got point. You're next up. And it's going right back in there. And I kind of equate that to Heinola tonight.
Yeah.
That really good game against Vancouver. I think his best, one of his best in a Jets jersey, but his best since the recall by far. But if you have to go from that and go, okay, now you're up top, you're on point against McDavid and Draisaitl if he plays and all that, that's a tough ask. But good for Heinola. And it's no disrespect to any other defenseman on this team. I don't think it's close, though. Like I when I said I don't think there's more important defenseman, I know how obvious that is, but I don't think there's a close second. I think that he's that important to this team on the back end.
Well, and it's funny, and I'm not here to dance on anyone for making the comments, but I still laugh because you brought up Seattle, and I think about how many people were mentioning leaving him exposed. I don't know if you remember that, and I'm not saying it was like 1,000 people or a huge number, but
there was quite a few.
There were a number of people who were like, "It's time to let Josh Morrissey go," and I'm thinking to myself, like, again, even when he wasn't playing at optimal, and we didn't obviously know the circumstances, but even then he was like, that's insane. Like, you just can't afford, like, I'm not suggesting he was a 1A at that point in his career, because he wasn't, but he was still significant enough that he was a good first pairing guy, maybe the 1B, not necessarily the 1A. He's showing us now that he's the 1A, but I just remember when people were talking like that, and I was like, who do you have that's replacing him? It's always easy to get rid of a guy, and then you're like, but who's taking that spot? Nobody.
And one of the reasons they wanted him in Seattle was the contract. Well, how good does that contract look now? Yeah. And that's the thing that I think that a lot of people don't remember is when they were saying that, well, okay, well, which $6 million or less defenseman are you going to get that's that talented? That's the thing with today's world, Dave, is like a lot of people ask me about Blake Wheeler all the time, and you know this, or the roster as a whole all summer. They're like, what makes you think this team is any better? They didn't make any significant changes. And it's the same to the Josh Morrissey to Seattle gang. When that team was coming into the league, I'm like, I know how he's playing right now.
Yeah.
I know their ages. I know everything. I also know what a good hockey player that isn't playing well looks like. And Josh Morrissey is a good hockey player. Now, I didn't know that about his father, or what he was going through. I say the same thing about Blake Wheeler. I say the same thing about Mark Scheifele. I was one of the guys that when he said what he said, I was like, he's got to go. But then, like, as the summer wears on and you're hearing this, and Mark Scheifele came on our show in August and talked, like, this is why I said that back then. It's not how I feel now. It's but back then, and it's all derived around winning. And I think that's the biggest storyline of this team in the past calendar year, seeing how it is New Year's. There's, and that's saying something because there's so many stories, but running this roster back and having the faith in it that that I've got some really good, talented hockey players here. And although I do think they explored options about getting better ones for the ones they had, at the end of the day, they didn't get those offers. And I think that's the biggest storyline. Bonus is a huge story. The Mark Scheifele turnaround and playing defensively and a new, fresh attitude from the change is a big story. Josh Morrissey's season is a big story. Connor Hellebuck getting back to Vezina caliber play is a huge story. But the biggest story to me is, much to what we're talking about with Morrissey or some other players, when fans ask, or listeners, and they call in and text, what are you talking about? He was awful this year. You have to sort of take into consideration, is he a good hockey player or not? Is there room for growth? And does he not, is a good hockey player not playing well, or is he a bad hockey player? And I just thought Josh Morrissey, I think he's a great hockey player. I think he's going to get better. I just never would have gotten rid of him. And the contract that you're talking about getting rid of, you're not going to find a more talented defenseman for $6 million or less. And so for all those reasons, I was like, the last thing they should do is give this guy to Seattle, and let him, he's too good of a defenseman to not sort of bounce back. Now, some don't, and some need to change of scenery. Some need to be traded. That's why when good players are traded and they all of a sudden explode for 2 years where they are, you sit there and you go, what was going on? Well, something was going on. It didn't mean they were bad hockey players. It means they were playing poorly. And so to see that, I think, is the biggest story. But yeah, I'm all in on Josh Morrissey from the Moose days. He's one of the most intelligent players I've ever talked to off the ice about off ice stuff. I saw how he got into the NHL with that first couple of months, and everybody wanted him on the team. And you and I were watching him with the Moose, and I was like, he was trying to do too many things. You could tell the coaching was in place, because for 2 weeks he'd try to hit everything that moved.
Yeah.
And you could tell that the coach said, you got to be more physical. And so that's what he did for 2 weeks. And then after that, they're like, you're trying to hit everything that moves. You need to just move the puck. And so he just tried to pass all the time.
Right.
And then, there was other aspects of his game where, and I think it was January, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was January of that Moose season where it just all came together. He was physical when he had to be physical. He was moving the puck when he needed to move it. He wasn't making errors and stuff. And the game slowed down for him and he relaxed. And that's one of the reasons why 6 or 7 years later, the Mark Scheifele's in their careers and stuff, I'm just like, it's there. It's just a matter of letting it happen. So I think Josh Morrissey's that important. And I'm with you. I kind of look back at some of the takes, especially after last season. I mean, remember, people wanted Hellebuck traded too. Get something for him while you can.
Yeah.
Well, where would you be this year? Like, what would you get for him? You're not getting Shesterkin. You might get a Ville Husso or somebody like that.
You're not getting it's trading pennies on the
that
dollar.
Caliber of play that that's what the biggest thing hockey organizations have to do is understand who they have and then figure out why they're not playing well. And so I think that's the biggest storyline for this past year on the Jets is Morrissey's a prime poster boy for this, is the faith to run this back, understanding that I've got a really good hockey team. They just didn't play well for whatever reason.
Well, Jim, you jumped ahead in my show plan, which I never actually sent you, because we're gonna get to the storylines of 2022.
I'm a fan of Josh Morrissey, is what I should have said.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's good, because you have to be, and he's a great. He really is one of the best people off the ice, as good as he is on the ice. I mean, he's an exemplary person on the ice.
That being said, I didn't see this coming from him. Like I thought he would be. People debate whether he's a number one stud D-man. I think he's in a league of 32. Like, he's not a Hedman, he's not Makar,
right?
He's not, but Roman Josi. But when you take away the points and throw in the way he defends and his hockey IQ, he is a number one D-man on probably 25 teams in the National Hockey League.
Well, and again, it's funny, talk about that idea of having faith. I mean, if you remember, and I know you do, but remember when he was with the Moose and people were like, well, he's a bust. He's playing for the Manitoba Moose. I'm like, since when? Like, the guys, defensemen take longer, or traditionally have taken longer to get to the NHL. And the reality is that, this is a guy that is, 19 years old, whatever he was. And you're sitting there going, like, you got to have patience. This is not going to be a situation where you give up on players. So that's kind of the instant gratification society we live in.
That's what I was mentioning about change. People want change all the time. The 3-game losing streak, they got to make a trade.
Right.
They want coaches fired. We live in this instant world when the minute something doesn't go well or somebody doesn't play well, they want that gone. That's my point of the world we live in right now, to sort of evaluate and try to improve your team roster wise, and then realize that nothing you're being offered or could do is going to make it better than what you have, and to run that back. I mean, maybe this is a life story, not just hockey. Patience is a virtue in today's society. Like you to not panic and bring this back. But also the second biggest story is Bonus, to bring him in and understand that he would be the guy that, with all the issues, this is the direction. But yeah, I'm fully with you on that instant change and this. I mean, they're doing this in Vancouver right now, right?
I don't know what they're doing.
What do you do in the contracts and everything else? And everybody's like, "What's taking so long?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you do with that team or that roster, but I just know that maybe dealing Horvat a month ago, or I can tell you the mistakes they made, and one of them is the JT Miller contract. They should have gave that to Horvat, and I like everything about JT Miller except for the way he talks to his goalies. But I liked everything about him. But I would have taken Horvat over him if he had to sign one of them. But with the roster now, like that's the iffy thing. Like, I know Canucks fans want it done, and they want to move, and they want to see what's going on, or they want a coach fired. But Rutherford's been around. I'm not saying I believe in Rutherford, but the patience is, I think, lost in today's pro sports world of figuring out what you have and what's best. I think that's needed more in the world.
Yeah. And we're obviously not a Canucks show, but I mean, the truth is you're also, your goaltenders are Spencer Martin and Colin Delia, who, I
Yeah.
used to watch in the AHL not too long ago. And we had Kevin Woodley on, who's great, and he breaks down goaltending, fantastically. So he had some interesting stuff to talk about with respect to that duo, but it's not your two guys that you were expecting to be your main goaltender. And Jim, you mentioned it. The Canucks came into Winnipeg having won 7 straight on the road, 3 games overall. So they were feeling good about themselves, and the Jets were able to respond. And one of those Jets who I thought responded exceptionally well, and the Jets needed him to, was Mark Scheifele. And Mark Scheifele had that, 3-goal, and it's not just about goals. Obviously, it's about, with him, we talk about the importance of him playing a complete game. And it really, that has become kind of one of those storylines. The goals scoring is huge. And his career high was 38 a few years back. And now he looks like he's going to obliterate that at, on pace for 52. And so, that to me is one of the biggest stories, because you needed a player. We talk about it, right? Or I mentioned it earlier. 4 guys, Lowry, Scheifele, Connor, and Dubois, make over $1 million. Really, and I said it on our Illegal Curve post-game show on Thursday night. This is a situation where if you win a game because of special teams, nobody is like going, well, you had to win because it was special teams. That's the reality right now with this crew. And so to me, that's one of those things that you have to be really, jazzed up if you're a Jets fan, is how well Mark Scheifele is playing right now.
Yeah, I give Mark Scheifele full credit. There's so many good storylines this past calendar year, but like I said, when I heard what he said after the Seattle game at the end of the year last year, I just sat back and I said, he's got to go. And I know that that's not the smartest move given his age and some older players like Wheeler and things like that if you're going to move a big contract like that. But I haven't talked to Mark in a long time, but back when I used to be in the room, I watched him grow and develop and sort of get to where he is. And he's always been an offensive guy. So that's, he's always felt that to help the team, he needed to score more, regardless of how much he's scoring. But so those comments were then, and of course we tried to get him on the show, and the offseason started, and we were waiting. And then he was coming into golf at Southwood in the Canadian Tour PGA, and tried to get him on. And he said, yeah, I'll come on. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. And then he talked to Sarah Orlesky first with Jets.com, WinnipegJets.com. And I heard those comments. I thought, well, I wonder if he's going to be as open as he was. And I was blown away by how open and honest he was. And so he addressed that. I will say that in my experience covering him, I do not think he liked Paul Maurice. And I don't think that it started the way people think it was from day one. I think for 2 or 3 years at the end of the year, when we in the media would be in scrums with him and ask him about, how's Paul Maurice doing for your career and stuff, he goes, yeah, coaching is a big part of it. And then he would mention Adam Oates. And so it wasn't a lot of, and I think, as that relationship went, the message was too stale from the same voice of Maurice by the time, it came time to make some vast improvements in his own game. And his own game improvements are always to be offensive. I still stand by the fact that there's no way you're going to convince me Paul Maurice wasn't asking him to play defense or back check or do that. No coach would. So the fact that Bowness got to him, but this isn't sort of a history lesson. I don't want to go down that. What I am saying is I give him full credit. I thought, this attitude is, and it was passion. He said, I want to win. I want to be a Winnipeg Jet. I want to do this. And so when Bowness came in, I think he's a player who at the end of his career will look back and go, I was too frustrated back then, or for these 2 seasons, and I should have done this better. But that being said, I think he deserves full credit for this 180 over the summer to where he's at. And I think that, we forget too often Paul Maurice said they're going to build a statue about him outside. And I think that was, looking back on it, a reference to go, publicly, yeah, I think he's that good of a player. I think what Paul Maurice stopped short of saying, if he becomes a 200-foot dominant center. I think that was public pressure to go, this is what I think of him. Mm-hmm. But I'm also, the conversations you don't know I'm having, have told him that if you want a statue outside, if you want to be, which I know you do, one of the top 3 centers in the National Hockey League, this is what you got to do with your game. Yeah. And so credit to him, he's doing it now. Water under the bridge, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Is he going to have regrets 30 years from now? Who knows? Probably, maybe not. I don't know that. But I think he deserves a ton of credit for this turnaround. He is leading on the ice. He has picked that up. He's been back with Wheeler, which was one of the storylines people used to vilify me out of. I used to put out on social media, the reason coaches or this coach keeps going back to Wheeler and Scheifele is because it works. And then I'd get the defensive metrics sent to me in the analytics. And I'm like, I'm not talking about 82 games a year. I'm talking about this team needs to score some goals. And over the next 5 games, that line is going to put up some points and hopefully not cost you as much. So I think he's a phenomenal job. I think, as we all do, we mature as we get older. We go in different directions. We get new jobs, new places, new leadership, and a breath of fresh air. And I think Mark Scheifele is a breath of fresh air this year. I think he's a dominant power forward. I think he's playing a 200-foot game. And I think he's helping carry this team a little bit. I think he's the guy that, he's still in that room. Like Wheeler and they're still, really close. But I think that Wheeler has sort of stepped back to the point of, I'm just going to play my hockey and I will say things when they need to be said. And if somebody wants something, I'll offer it, but I'm just going to and I think Mark has taken on that role. And I think taking on that role has helped him. It's the old adage of, instead of letting Blake say, we got to get back and back check and play defense, I have to say it now. So when I'm saying it, I better do it, as opposed to I'm hearing it and I'm maybe not and I'm hearing it and I'll but in the game, what I'm doing, I think the fact that he has to actually step up this year and preach it has helped him, sort of, well, if I'm going to talk the talk, I better walk the walk. And it's a subconscious thing and all that. But I think he deserves a ton of credit for the season, the turnaround. Like I said, I wasn't a guy that believed in him much in May. Yeah. And through the summer, when we talked to him in August, I was like, well, this will be interesting now. I'm intrigued to see this training camp. And then I saw a training camp. And so I think he deserves a ton of credit now. And I know some people out there are going to go, well, why didn't he do it 3 years ago? Again, I think we all look back and go, well, I could have handled this situation better 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I think that he deserves credit for water under the bridge in the season he's having and the direction he's gone with his own game to help the team game.
Jim, I'm already reflecting on the intro to the show and thinking I could have had a better one. So, I mean, yes, people always look back and reflect and wonder what they could have done better.
And even in my own career, like I think we all do this. We all go, this is what I believe in. This is what's right. This is what I'm doing right now. And then you look back 4 years ago and you're like, I probably should have done more of this, or I probably should have done more of that. And that would have helped me in this situation. And I just think that's maybe where he's at. And the other thing I'll say on Scheifele and Maurice is I think we've also had, I know I have in my past, some bosses in the past where I did not get along with, I didn't agree with. And now that years have gone by, I still didn't get along. I had one boss say, I made some poor decisions, and I'm just like, yeah, you did, but we all do. Like, I'm not sort of that thing sort of. So, and I think that, it's just one of those things in relationships that go when you're ingrained. And the other thing that's lost in these relationships, Dave, is we're comparing our own work lives and our own bosses and stuff.
Right.
Pro sports is different. Like pro sports is there's careers on the line. There's a lot of money on the line. There's pressure on the line, and it's done in front of everybody. And so, one little clip here or one little conversation there can really rub somebody a lot wrong a lot more than like if our boss said something or you said something to somebody you're working with and stuff like that. So, but yeah, a lot of credit. I'm going on and on here. A lot of credit to him. I think he had that game playing ill that he had. And I don't mean the goals. I mean, I had no clue that he was that ill. After the game on Thursday, and then you throw in the goals, but I thought he played really well up and down the ice, and then you find out how ill he was. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has been a difference making year for a number of Winnipeg Jets, and that's not a bad thing for a Jets team that could maybe be looking to go all in. Jim, we'll of course discuss that. We'll discuss all the injuries. We'll discuss everything that there is to talk about with respect to these Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, the Winnipeg Ice. We have lots of time, but right now we're going to head to commercial break. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Jim Toth.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you, but why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies, and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I am Dave Minuk. He is Jim Toth, and we have a action-packed day for you today, starting, of course, with this morning's show, Jim, but then it just keeps going. Well, I've got my niece's first birthday. Happy birthday, Emily.
Happy birthday.
A big shout out to Emily. She turns 1 today. So that's an exciting day for my sister and my brother-in-law, and my niece. But in addition to that, we've got the Manitoba Moose playing at 4 o'clock. We've got the Winnipeg Ice playing at 5 o'clock. We've got the Winnipeg Jets playing at 9 o'clock. I don't know what time Canada's playing. I think it's around 5. I think 5 o'clock Canada's playing. You've got Jets prospects playing in, are the Finns playing the Americans tonight? I think maybe.
I think so, yes.
So you've got Rutger McGorty, you've got Brad Lambert, you've got Chaz Lucius, you've got all the first rounders that are in action against each other. There's lots going on, Jim. And then, of course, after the Jets Oilers game, you can join Ezzy and I. I pray Ezzy makes it to, otherwise Jim's coming back on with me, but I pray Ezzy makes it on his flight to from Puerto Vallarta, wherever somewhere in Mexico, somewhere in the warmth, back to Winnipeg. And someone was asking.
I just saw that on Twitter. He's in I didn't know he was in Mexico. Now I'm leaving. I'll fill in any time, but not if he's in Mexico. Such a busy hockey day. I don't have time to fix this wall.
Can't see it. What's wrong with the? Oh, that right there. I didn't even notice that, actually. I just
noticed that when we were coming back here. I'm like, oh yeah, I had a little water issue that I'm not fixed the drywall yet. But but too busy today. Won't be doing it today with all the hockey on.
Jim, that's like my Baba had a problem with the car. She would just turn the radio up. So all you have to just do is slightly turn your camera, and no one would be the wiser.
I know. I saw that when we came back, and I'm like, oh, there
you go.
Everybody's like, is Toth's house okay?
Yeah, see, now you're perfect. Now you have your chair, which is a little different, but
yeah.
Jim, we were talking about Mark Scheifele and, the improvement in him. And again, there's so many guys. We could go down the list. Obviously, Josh Morrissey, Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois is having a phenomenal season. And so is Adam Lowry. And Adam Lowry, the one thing with Adam Lowry that I've talked about, because I think defensively, phenomenal player. But I always said, if you're going to be a third line center, you need to be able to produce. And that's not all on Adam Lowry, of course, because he has had a cavalcade of line mates, more probably than anyone else, I would think, in the Jets organization throughout the years. I don't think anybody's had as many wingers as Adam Lowry. Of course, Adam Lowry is now a winger, which is kind of what I want to talk to you about, because what do you think of that move? Do you like that move with Adam Lowry? And again, I understand circumstances are breeding that, but what do you think of him, paired alongside Mark Scheifele?
Well, I liked it. It was only one game, and I thought it looked good. That was one of the storylines going into Thursday's game that I was going to watch. I think that the move to wing wasn't so much of I don't think Adam Lowry could do this. It was more of, man, he is such an important center for this team down the middle and checking and especially face-offs and everything like that. So, but they loaded up that line on Tuesday, that top line, and just hoped to get enough goals out of them that they could get a win. And it worked for a goal. They had a golden opportunity for a second one, but there wasn't much else throughout the lineup. So I didn't mind it. I think it's a credit to Adam. I don't think it's so much a credit to Adam Lowry going to the wing, because I think Adam Lowry is a really good player. I think he's got a 40-point season in him, even on the third line, still to come. I think it's a credit to Kevin Stenlund. I think that's sort of going, hey, like, you've been so impressive and done such a good job that we can do this. So that's what I think that's what allowed them to do. I liked the lineup, Dave. I really did, compared to when they loaded up the top line, with Connor and Scheifele and Dubois, and just sort of said, hopefully we can outscore and not give up too much on the other three lines. I didn't know Adam Lowry could play wing, but I believe in Adam Lowry as a hockey player, that I didn't think it would be any difficulty to him. But I think it speaks to the fact that I like the line, but I think it speaks to the fact that how good Kevin Stenlund was. But I liked Adam Lowry up there. I know on the hat trick goal, he was going to look to pass to Scheifele the whole way, because that's just the kind of teammate he is. And I thought when Pettersson was closing in on him, I'm like, Adam, he might want to just shoot this. I don't think that passes there, but he got it through, and Scheifele buried it. He's an integral part to this team too. And that's another great contract. I remember when it was signed, a lot of people were going, well, Adam Lowry, and he doesn't score 30 points and this and that. But Adam Lowry is one of those guys that I think is what you need to do in the National Hockey League. You know what you're going to get from him year in, year out, day in, day out. And if you can lock those guys in and not have to worry about that position, and that's the part of the cap world that I love about that contract is 3 years from now, do you know what you're going to get from Adam Lowry? Yeah, you do. And so if you don't have to worry every offseason about how to fill that third line center spot, I think that's a relief, and you know what it's going to cost you. But credit to Adam. I thought he looked good up there, but I also wasn't surprised. Like, I believe heavily in Adam Lowry, and I think that he could do this. And especially, again, your original point about his production, and I'm with you, they've got to produce more, and Adam Lowry's got to produce more. But I thought it was also good for him to get to play with Mark Scheifele. I think that he's such a good player and good teammate that he'll never say that, and I don't think it even crosses his mind. He'll just play with whoever you give him, but I don't think he's had a lot to work with over the years either, and so I thought it was a good move for the team to go, but I thought it was a surprising move, just from the standpoint of, is you need that third line center, and I don't think they would have done it without Kevin Stenlund.
And that's the beauty of these players that are coming up from the Moose. And I actually talked about it last night in the Moose game with some of the players. I said, like, when a guy gets recalled, it just provides another guy an opportunity. And similarly, we see this with, look, Christian Reichel played 13 games for the Jets last year. Yeah. Right? Scored his first NHL goal. So guys get an opportunity. And, we saw it with Michael Esimont when he kind of came in and was making some noise. He's fallen off a little bit, of course. The necessities kept him in the lineup. But Kevin Stenlund is, and Kevin Stenlund's a really interesting case study, of course, with his familiarity with Pierre-Luc Dubois, signed here in the offseason, was sent down, didn't have a remarkable training camp, and was reliable with the Moose. And, he's just kind of a steady guy with Manitoba. But I remember talking to him after one game, and I asked him, I don't remember the specific question. I'm sure it was pretty generic, but regardless, the response was interesting from him. It was just talking about how the Jets are watching. And, that's the benefit of these guys playing in the same building, is that they know, on any given night, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Craig Heisinger, Larry Simmons, like, they're in the building, they're watching, and they are, they're rewarding guys based on, what they're able to do in the American Hockey League. And Kevin Stenlund, a perfect example. He was down there and he was a pro, and he was being a good pro. And he had 71 NHL games, I think, going into the season under his belt. So he could have been upset when he's not the first guy getting a recall. And instead, he just kept playing his game, kept playing within the Moose system, which is obviously the Jet system, and did which again, kind of what guys need to do, right? Have that ability to play PK, but play center. And that, you're right, 100% right. Like, his ability to come in and be a, consistent contributor is an important factor for a team that, like you said, Jim, or like I asked you originally, had that necessity to move Adam Lowry into that wing position with beside Mark Scheifele, and then not lose a beat by being able to keep Kevin Stenlund on that as that third line center.
Yeah, I saw him play about a month and a half ago. They were playing the Iowa Wild.
Yeah.
And it was a Saturday afternoon game, and I was there. And first of all, I said, "Is that Blake Wheeler?" And then actually
time.
Hustler happened to be at the game, and he came inside with me for a period. And I was like, "Who is that?" And he's like, "Don't you remember in training camp? He's the one that everybody said because he wears 28 and stuff. So he looks just like Blake Wheeler, but he plays like Blake Wheeler. He's tough in the corners. He's a big along the boards. He's really smart." I don't obviously think he has the finishing skill and elite passing of Blake Wheeler, but the way he positions himself, the way he uses his body, his frame, and then he is a smart guy to know where to go and where to be and where the puck might go or how to break up a play that's developing the other way. So when he got called up, I wasn't surprised, but that's an interesting conversation you had with him because I again, not even knowing, I'm like, so who is this? And I saw, oh, he's 26 and came from Columbus and a draft pick and stuff. But to your point of what he said about the Jets are watching, I don't think it was just because of injuries. I think the Jets brass go to the Moose games and go, if somebody's not playing well. Like, I think that's the new philosophy around this team that I don't think is talked enough about. We hear it from Rick Bowness and we've seen it. Like, you had a bad game, you're out. And it's not like you're a bad person or I hate you now and you're going to be back in, but the leash is gone. I don't know you guys. You don't know me. This is what we're doing. And if you play well and toe the line, you're in. And if you're not, you'll get back in, but you gotta be consistent. You gotta be in the lineup. And I think that's the way the brass is approaching this year. And so I think that's how they brought Kevin Stenlund in. If he said that to you, I think they said, look, Kevin, you saw our season last year. Obviously you're going to probably not make the team out of camp,
right?
But there's opportunity here. If we don't like the way somebody's playing, you're going to come up. And so, and maybe younger players don't know that, like the Brad Lamberts of the world and the high draft picks of the world, and Reichel's up now, but maybe he was, he's already here and he just knows that, well, they see me, hopefully get a chance. When you're bringing guys like Stenlund into the organization, I think you have to sell them a little bit. And I think the sale is, we got a good team. You're probably not going to make it out of camp, but we're also not going to have the patience we've had with this team in years past. And so if you play well, we're going to bring you up. And I thought he played great in that game against Iowa. And then he got called up a month later and everybody was going, so who is this? And I'm like, you're going to like this guy. Like, he's going to play, and I think the other thing that with his good play, it's allowed is for that bottom line to play more. And that's what happened, right? Remember what Bowness said about Gustafsson going to the wing? And everybody's like, well, you got to make Stenlund comfortable because he's an AHL player. And then, no, Gustafsson's going to the wing because he's got to produce.
Right.
And he's not producing.
That's
and you can't stay in the lineup for 30 some games and not score a goal.
Right.
And then comes Stenlund. And so it's not, again, hey, Gustafsson, we're sour on you. Get out, go to the wing and maybe demoted. It's go to the wing and keep working hard. Here's a guy who is working hard and we're going to give him an opportunity. And I think that's what he was probably addressing when he told you they're watching. He was probably signed under those parameters.
Yeah.
We're watching. And if you play well, you'll get a chance.
Yeah. And I think, again, so many people are just pull the trade on, fire away and get a trade, make a trade. Now, first of all, sometimes you do have internal options. And right now the Jets, look, Drew was talking about it on our last, I think it was the last post-game show. He said, if the Jets can finish an insane December at 8-8, that's not necessarily a bad thing, given the laundry list of skating wounded that they're currently dealing with. I mean, like I said, they've got Perfetti for whatever reason. Cap Friendly still has it. Well, they haven't put him on IR. So I guess he's still on the regular roster, but the reality is you've got 7 guys. I mean, and not just 7, minor players. You've got some of your biggest players right now. You've got a top, a full complete, top 6 line that's currently off the, not playing. And look, every team is dealing with injury. I mean, but right now, no team I don't think is dealing with more significant injuries than the Colorado Avalanche, who I think have about $28 million in salary currently out, and the Jets, who have $25 million in salary currently out. And it's amazing if you look at the Jets on Cap Friendly. I mean, their salary out right now is almost as much as their salary in in certain regards. So it is a significant situation. And if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, Jim, and you're wondering, and Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press wrote about the idea of the Jets going all in this year, or in the next couple of years, getting a guy who's going to be for this year and next year. Because right now you've got Connor Hellebuck for this year and next year, Mark Scheifele for this year and next year, Pierre-Luc Dubois for this year and next year, and Blake Wheeler. So you've got your group right now. And obviously you've got Cal Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, Adam Lowry, Josh Morrissey. Those guys are signed longer than the list I just went over. But it seems like we talked about this window, but right now this is a pretty significant window. And Connor Hellebuck bouncing back and being Connor Hellebuck, you just don't, like, you look at all the other teams, not a lot of teams have goaltenders like Connor Hellebuck. And you have to take advantage of that because you don't know you can't predict the future. And we don't know what the conversations are like with Kevin Cheveldayoff and Connor Hellebuck or his agent. But the reality is all we can look at is what is our present reality. When present reality says you've got Connor Hellebuck for 2 more years. So, thinking about Mike's article, and I'm not sure if you read it or not yet, Jim, but the reality is it's not a hard concept. Should the Jets go all in? And if they do, are you making that trade now when, to be honest, and again, this is my feeling on it, I don't think you're making a trade right now. One, because I think you're treading water. Again, obviously, we'll see what happens against the Oilers tonight. But 2, you're in a real position of weakness. Every GM knows that you need to make a trade. So therefore, I would imagine that the ask has already just increased by 25 to 50%, simply given the fact that you've got 7 guys who are not playing for you right now.
Yeah, first and foremost, there's not a trade coming in my mind over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if and when there is a trade, it would be a trade that they would do in November. It'd be a trade they would do now, or it'd be a trade they do in March. It would be a trade that makes this team better and helps them win this year and going forward. So you can't trade injured players, and there's nobody in the lineup right now that you would trade to bring in. And there's not a top 6 person out there that you could trade, and they're going to come in and get you 5 wins over the next 2 weeks. That one player that's going to come in. So I think this team isn't panicking. I don't think there's a trade out there right now. And if it is, it was a trade they've been considering since prior to all these injuries. So I think they have to tread water, and that's all they can do right now for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Get as many points as you can. I mean, the win on Thursday was much needed, but also not just because of the 3-game losing streak, but over the next 2 to 3 weeks until they get some reinforcements. And all due respect to Saku Menelainen, he might keep a puck out of the net, but he's not going to, provide enough offense to get you some wins. So I think I felt that way about Vancouver. If they lose to Vancouver, I won't be shocked. They lose to Edmonton tonight, I won't be shocked. If they can get some wins, I'm not going to be shocked. I think that this is a team that has to play their system, deal with the injuries. But I'm with Mike McIntyre. I've been saying I said this in the offseason when they rolled it back into training camp, Dave. They've got to go for it this year. Because next year you have to do something. You cannot let 2 of the 3 in Hellebuck, Dubois, and Scheifele walk to free agency. You just can't do it. So I think, January 1, which is Sunday, you can start talking to Pierre-Luc Dubois, but Pierre-Luc Dubois has made it very clear that he's going to free agency. And it's much like Bo Horvat. I think if the Canucks gave Bo Horvat $10 million a year, he's still going to free agency. That's what players have earned. And guys who know, I've always said this, that's what we saw with Goudreau. That's what we saw with Tkachuk and everybody else. Guys who know the money's going to be there. I don't know why you wouldn't go to free agency unless you're Tkachuk and go, I'll go there and I want to be there and I like it there. Then I'll go. But so I do think you have to go all in this year. I think you have to augment whatever you can right now. But I also think they're going to do it in a fashion of looking towards the future. And I was at a game, I forget, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I made mention of this on the air, and Arizona was in, and the whole brass was in, even Bergeron, who's no longer with Montreal and consulting with them. But the GM was there, his brother, who's their assistant, and then their assistant GM, his brother was there. And they were sitting beside me, and they had lists of players from both teams. And it was the Florida game. It was Florida and Winnipeg, and they were, making a list of players. I think it's Jeff Chychrun. I think the Jets are looking at Jeff Chychrun and his contract and going, look, this is a guy that has term, and the Jets can make term, and they have to make term deals because free agents most likely aren't staying in Winnipeg or wanting to sign here. If you can get them here, you might be able to re-sign them. But I think the Jets have an indication, or will, in this early new year of what Scheifele, Hellebuck, and we already know what Dubois is going to do. All Scheifele said is that like he wants to be a Jet and he wants to win here, but he wants to win. I don't know what he's going to get. I feel that he's going to start at 10, and I don't know if they can afford that. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Hellebuck, I think, likes it here. I think that he, you know, the lifestyle, everything else. I don't think he's a guy that goes, I want to be in New York or I want to be in California. And I don't know that, but I think he likes it here. He's got a family here now. I think if you make him a comfortable offer that he would consider it because he just likes being a Winnipeg Jet and believes in the organization. Mark Scheifele, I think, wants to get paid, and I understand that. And so I think that when you look at the numbers he's putting up, he would stay here. And these are just my opinions, but it's going to start with a 10. Yeah. And I think the minute the Jets start throwing 10 at him, who will be 29 or 30 and some term, I don't think they can do that. And Dubois, we know that. So I think that you have to start this off season. No matter what kind of season you have at the end of the year, you have to start looking at your options with those guys. And I think they've already started. That's why I think a Jeff Chychrun makes sense here. That's why I think that if they can swing a deal for a high-end prospect, and I'm just throwing it out there, I'm not saying it's him, but Heinola, maybe and you make the playoffs and that first-round pick is 20 to 30. If you can swing a trade for a guy with a first-round pick, a prospect, and maybe a third pick and or another prospect, then I think they're looking at deals with term like that. But I'm with McIntyre. They have to go all in this year because you don't know what's going to go on next year. And if those guys to say, you know, I'm happy here for another year and stuff, you cannot start looking at, like, say this is next year and we're going into January and they're second in the division and top 10 in the NHL. What do you do? Like, do you trade those guys now? You can't. You cannot sit here like this. So think of it today. Say next week, Cheveldayoff comes out and says we move Dubois, or we move Scheifele because they're going to free agency, and I can't risk losing them. To me, this is the year you go all in. This is the season. Then in the offseason, you look at what you have. You have those conversations of, hey, we went to the third round this year, you know, and what are you thinking? Do you want to be around here? Do you not want to be around here? And because if you do this next year at this time of the year, you can't let those guys go and then they just go test free agency. And free agency, I do believe Dubois when he says, I will consider Winnipeg. But I think that once you get to free agency and the offers start coming in from 10, 11, 12 cities, you know, as comfortable you are, Winnipeg's not going to be at the forefront. So I agree. This is the year you go all in. This is the year you do it. But I don't think it's rentals. I think it's moves that can kind of help offset them. Like if Jeff Chychrun comes in this year, that's a huge bonus to them. And no offense to Heinola, but Chychrun's going to contribute more right now than Heinola is. Then in the offseason, you can sort of go, you know, what are we doing? What do we got? Well, at least we know, you know, maybe we move Pionk. Maybe I don't know. But to just do it with these guys walking a free agency, I know other teams do it, and the Colorados can afford to do it because Colorado probably at the deadline is going to look at getting some guys in that are going to want to come there.
Right.
This isn't Colorado. This isn't Tampa Bay. This isn't the Rangers. You've got to make your moves a year before you're forced to.
Yeah, and you know the Chychrun one's an interesting one, and you know because there's so many teams that are in pursuit. Right. And you hear about LA's interested. Toronto wants him. Like everybody.
Like the cost of him is going to be huge.
It's astronomical for sure. And again, if you're the Arizona Coyotes, that's what you want. You want to keep, I mean, and he's playing well. He's producing. And even though he's a left shot, we know he plays on the right side. So, I mean, that's a, you know, Jacob Chychrun and Josh Morrissey as a tandem, Jim. I mean, that's a pretty solid duo, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to look at that now
and for 2 to 3 more years. That's why you do it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, are you in a win now? I understand not wanting to upset the pipeline because the pipeline is what feeds this organization. When you look at, you know, the cap friendly and they show all the guys where they're coming from, you know, they're all drafted. Most of them are drafted. That's kind of the lifeblood of this organization. But at certain points, you know, we're 11 years into the genesis of this Winnipeg Jets team, and you want to see what they're going to look like. And look, I suspect, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's going to try and go for a Paul Stastny type of trade where it's a player who can come in, have an impact, maybe a little bit, you know, off the board. Maybe a lot of people weren't. A little misdirection. The Jets are sending people to watch the Arizona game, but maybe they've also got guys elsewhere they can grab someone. So to me, that is, you're right. The Jets generally don't make a big splash. They tend more to kind of go after someone that, they think is going to be impactful. And look how impactful Paul Stastny was for that run. And nobody expected him to come from St. Louis. Nobody expected a Jets and St. Louis trade, because it's, of course, in division. So that to me is the way I think the Jets are going to look. But, we'll have to stay tuned for that, Jim. Just like we're going to have to stay, folks are going to have to stay tuned for okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say the options are all out there, but you have to do it this year. You have a playoff team right now, and you have to go all in, because in the final year of deals and the closer guys get to free agency, and I don't blame them, the more enticing it is. And you can sit here and go, look, I appreciate the offer, but make me an offer this summer too, and I'll consider it.
Right. Exactly. Well, I will consider any offers you have for me later, Jim. But for right now, we are going to go to commercial break. We're going to pay some bills, and we will be back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the final hour. It's been like that, Jimmy, but we're going to switch to do, we'll keep on talking about the Jets, and then we'll come back and after these commercial words.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave.
I'm hungry now.
He's Jim Toth. Yeah, well, people watch our commercials and they get a little hungry, and that's a good thing. So hopefully they make their way to our sponsors. Not all of them. We don't want you eating at the Zappias. Although the Zappias probably make some great food. Frank's always trying to entice us over with some of his homemade food, which is always a good thing. So especially in the summer, you should see the Zappia boys are always sending pictures. They do some good stuff. So the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is all about hunger, Jim. That's what we do. We try and satiate your hunger for Jets news, for Moose news, Ice news, and of course, if you have a hankering for some pizza, then you can head over to Boston Pizza and crunch a pizza, as he does all the time.
I had some Boston pizza last night. It was delicious.
There you go. Boston Pizza. Well, speaking of a guy who can afford some Boston Pizza is Danny Zhilkin, the Jets 2022 third rounder who they signed to a contract yesterday. I'm not going to ask you for an assessment of his season with the Guelph Storm. in the OHL, Jim, because none of us are actually watching OHL hockey. But, I mean, it's another bit of business that 2022, that's a third player now from that draft class, of course, by the Winnipeg Jets, that they've gotten signed. And I mean, we could see Zhilkin at the end of the year, I would imagine, once his OHL season is done, joining the Moose on a PTO and or ATO, sorry, and then getting a chance to play with Manitoba, like we saw with 2020 second rounder Daniel Torgerson and 2019 fourth rounder Henry Nikkanen. Those guys got a chance to come up and, of course, get in some games. And then they played some playoff games, which was maybe a little unexpected, but they had an impact. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And Zhilkin seems to be kind of an impactful player, that third rounder. And again, I can't pretend like I've actually watched anything other than the occasional highlight, but he seems like a good kid on and off the ice.
Yeah, I've never seen him play a game, but I was talking with him, not him, but with Kelly Moore at Jets at Noon yesterday on 680 CJOB, and he met him at the draft when he was drafted in the third round. I think he's 2 points above a point a game player this year in the O. He's a centerman. He is Russian, and Kelly said that he came over when he was like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah,
to
basically
North America.
Canadian.
So he grew up here predominantly, but was born over there. So he's one of those European players that's European, but basically from 8 years old and up, he's been playing in the Canadian system. And so he's just another piece to the puzzle. I think it's a good signing. You got a third round pick. You sign him. I mean, Adam Lowry was a third round pick, and Adam Lowry's a center. And so I think it's just another piece of the puzzle, some business being done, and good for him to get his first contract and the Jets to get him signed. And we'll see where he is 2 to 3 years from now.
Well, and that is the beauty of having, the Moose in the same city as the Jets. And we're going to talk to Moose assistant coach Nolan Baumgartner at 10:30. And it is going to be a busy Illegal Curve day, folks, because, of course, I'll be at the Moose game a little bit later this afternoon, and then we will be covering the Jets game. You can listen on CJOB with Jim's crew, and you can, of course, join us on the Illegal Curve post-game show. Hopefully that's Ezzy and I, could be Jim and I, could be Drew. I might force Drew from Kentucky to do it if Ezzy is unable to be on his flight on time, but we'll see. It's going to be a busy, busy Saturday, and hopefully you'll spend part of that Saturday with us on Illegal Curve. But Jim, one of the things we talked about, well, we haven't talked about yet, but is this Oilers team. I mean, they're an interesting bunch, and they're now without Leon Draisaitl. He didn't play last night in Seattle. I looked at the comments from Oilers head coach Jay Woodcroft. I was going to say Todd Woodcroft, but that's his brother, Jay Woodcroft. And he just said he's dealing with some minor bumps and bruises. So I'm not sure about in terms of his availability for tonight's game. The Oilers may choose to give him another night off, and then, that gives him a couple of days to rest and heal up. But the Oilers are an interesting team, right? I mean, they're fighting for, a playoff spot in the sense that, like, that Pacific is kind of wide open. Like, you don't really know, like, you don't know which teams are real, right? You think Seattle is 100% real, and they have been, and the numbers seem to bear that out. But of course, the Oilers pummeled them. I think they scored 3 goals in like 70 seconds in the first period, and then rolled to a 7-2 win. So what are your initial thoughts on this Oilers team and the challenges they'll present the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, I don't like the Oilers, to be honest with you. And I don't mean like off the ice and stuff like that. I don't like the way they're constructed. I think they overachieved last year, to be honest with you. I really do. I think they got Mike Smith on the right month at the right time in the playoffs, because that's not going to last. And so it was funny because they got to the Calgary series, and I was shocked that they beat Calgary, to be honest with you. And I know the firepower they have and stuff, but basically Mike Smith outdueled Jacob Markstrom, which I don't think will ever happen again.
Right.
And not just because Mike Smith probably won't play again. I don't know, but I don't like the way they're constructed in the back end.
Yeah.
I really like Stuart Skinner, and I think he's the future, but I thought that last year, and I would have rolled the dice with a backup for 2 to 3 years at $2 to $3 million and Stuart Skinner this year. I would have not gone and got Jack Campbell, and I would not have locked him into that contract. And so it's just more of the same from different leadership there. And Ken Holland, I fully admire and loved everything he did in Detroit. I knew he needed to go get a goaltender, but to me, when you look at the trade for goaltending that Colorado did, when you look at the trade for goaltending that Detroit did, that's what the Oilers should have done. They should have sent something in a third round pick and maybe another player to get a Ville Husso or a Grigoriev, just along those lines. To invest that much in a goaltender that literally was on a playoff team and they didn't want him at any price. So I don't like the way they're constructed. They have no depth scoring whatsoever. I like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I always have. And of course, Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. I think they'll be better when Evander Kane gets back in the lineup because it'll balance some scoring. But right now, I'm surprised with no Draisaitl. They put 7 up against Seattle last night. I really am. I'm not sold on Seattle either. But I just think that the Oilers are in a lot of trouble. I would not have given Darnell Nurse $9.2 million because I don't think you would had to give Darnell Nurse $9.2 million. If you look at Darnell Nurse and Josh Morrissey, I think Darnell Nurse would be lucky to get $6 million on the open market. I really do.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing there is just rinse and repeat and causing themselves more trouble. That Darnell Nurse contract and Jack Campbell contract will hurt them. I like everything about Zach Hyman, but they never should have done that either. They didn't need a guy like Zach Hyman. Well, they did. They needed a Zach Hyman, but they needed a defenseman at $5 million a lot more.
Yeah.
And if they would have taken the Jack Campbell money and the Zach Hyman money and had that invested in 2 defensemen at $5 million each, they would be a much better hockey team. And they just didn't. And the money they've spent. So now for tonight's game, I think they're dangerous. They just put up 7 against, Seattle. I don't know if Skinner's going to play tonight, but I don't believe in Jack Campbell. I think Jack Campbell will give you a couple of good games, and tonight might be the one if he's the one in the net. But I just don't like the way they're constructed. I don't think they're built for long playoff runs. I think they got lucky last year, to be honest with you. People forget that. I know what they say when you have Draisaitl and Connor McDavid in the playoffs and all that, and people forget that Leon Draisaitl, did he have 17 points in those 5 games against Calgary? That is record breaking.
Yeah, I think so.
That is historic, and I don't even think Connor McDavid in a playoff run this year will have 17 points in a 5-game playoff series.
Yeah.
They got some astronomical things that I just don't think will repeat themselves. That from Draisaitl and their goaltender, Mike Smith. So I don't like the way they're constructed. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, to be honest with you. They need Evander Kane back in this lineup to balance out some scoring. But after those 4 names that I just said, and Kane's not even there, but after Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, and Connor, I mean, Kyler Yamamoto, I thought was going to be a player. He can't produce. Jesse Puljujarvi is still a mystery.
Yeah.
Hyman is a good player, and he's having, career years because he's playing with McDavid.
Right.
But if you're the Jets and can shut down a line, I don't think there's much else there. So I don't like the Oilers, the way they're constructed, and I don't think they're going anywhere long term.
Well, when the Jets were able to shut down Connor McDavid, of course, in the playoffs that one year, it was the guy tasked with it was Neil Pionk. Now, Neil Pionk has not necessarily looked very Neil Pionkian, and I'm wondering, it's interesting to me, the coaching philosophy. I mean, I remember Rick Bowness spoke, and he wasn't responsible, but he talked about, it may have been actually Pionk talking about a player not playing at full health. And I thought to myself, like, at what point is that just an excuse? Like, you've got guys who could come up from the American Hockey League if you need to, let them play. You've got a lot of question marks. And look, you didn't think Declan Chisholm, I mean, not you specifically, Jim, but most people didn't expect Declan Chisholm, the 2018 fifth rounder. And don't get me wrong, I'm one of his biggest proponents, or backers, sorry, actually not proponents, backer, because I think he can skate better than almost any other defensive prospect. Probably actually is the best skater of the bunch, has an exceptional offensive IQ. And I think he's a guy who you wanted to take a look at, but I didn't expect him to play 2 games last year, and he did. And so to me, it's a bit of I hate when coaches say that, say, oh, well, he wasn't 100%. Well, if he isn't 100%, and I don't know that Pionk is 100%, and look, it's the NHL and it's a grind. And I don't think anybody's at 100%, as we're seeing, Josh Morrissey, how many times he left the ice, come back, obviously didn't come back that last game, but left the ice, or came back and didn't come back on the ice. But, to me, it becomes a question of, and obviously the roster and the cap situation with the Jets is very significant. 29 players, they can't even recall anyone anyways, because they don't have the cap room to call anybody up, because they're at, I think they've got $738,000 in cap space right now, and the lowest contract that they've got from a defensive perspective, I think is $750. So they can't even call anybody up anyways. But the fact is, there becomes a certain point where you're doing the player a disservice. Like, I understand you want to keep him in the lineup, and these guys are warriors, but at what point are you hurting your hockey team by not letting him heal and maybe giving a prospect who you didn't anticipate being able to step in? I mean, look at Johnny Kovacevic for the Montreal Canadiens. Like the Jets, for whatever reason, wanted to keep Kyle Capobianco. And I understand, like, he can play on the right side. And Kovacevic obviously is a right side guy, but he's done well in Montreal, at least. And again, I'm not watching his games, but it seems like he has been, able to get into that lineup. And that's not a good lineup by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been able to be a player. And I just think, like, sometimes you miss an opportunity to give a young guy that opportunity, like a Leon Gavanke, the 2017 fifth rounder, or a Declan Chisholm. Let him play 5, 6, 7 games before, and allow a guy like a Neil Pionk if you need to. I mean, he's a right side guy, so it would be probably Gavanke, but give him an opportunity. You know what I mean? Versus playing a guy who's at 75% and he's just not helping the team, because the things that he's good at, like Pionk, it looks like his skating is just not right now, is not there. I don't know if he's got a foot injury or something, but he's just not moving the way we are traditionally used to seeing him move, at least to my eye.
Yeah, you're right. He might be hurt and he might be banged up and not at that. Kovacevic is interesting. Kovacevic is interesting because I think they gambled there. Like, I don't think they wanted to lose him, but I think that when they looked at the waiver wire, and say what you want about Kyle Capobianco, but he's got some NHL experience and some pedigree to him, and some scouts have seen him. I think they looked at him and Stanley and Kovacevic and said, well, unless you know what this guy is or have seen him, I think that a lot of times when teams look at the waiver wire, they look at NHL experience, and he had the least.
Yeah.
And a little bit older. And I think maybe they thought they could slip him through. Because I don't think Logan Stanley. I know Logan Stanley wouldn't have gone through waivers. He would have been picked up.
Yeah.
And Kyle Capobianco, I mean, the Jets brought him in, but I think if they put him on waiver wires, and maybe the other thing is at the time they waived Kovacevic is what they looked at, and they said, well, here's a team. Like, I don't know, maybe Arizona goes, well, we'd love to get him back. Do you know what I mean? And then maybe they go, well, we don't want to risk that. So hopefully this can sneak through. But that being said, I'm with you. Like, Pionk's obviously having a troubled season, but he's also been instrumental. And people might even look at his season last year and go, well, it wasn't as dominant that first year he came in the Trouba trade. But then you look at what you just mentioned against McDavid in the playoffs. And like, that's what I think they're hoping to. So I think guys are playing hurt and banged up and everything like that. And something negative. I don't think he would be playing if he is banged up, if it was something that could get worse. Right. I think that I think if he is banged up right now, because there's so much tread left in the season, that it's just something he's going to have to deal with throughout the year as well. But that being said, like, I think he's still a player trying to find his game. And I think he's sort of, he was in the Rangers and his analytics were horrible, but the Jets saw something in him. He came in and he just relaxed and played his, like, guys, this is the thing. I mean, we talked about Morrissey, but I think Pionk is trying to, it sounds ridiculous because he's a veteran, but just trying to find his game on this team. And I think, he's trying to do maybe sometimes a little bit too much, maybe a little bit too little. Maybe he's trying to be physical. Maybe he's this. I just think that he's a player that I would like to give some more time to and to settle into, just letting his role come to him and stuff. So he can skate. And I think that's why you're mentioning what you're mentioning, Dave, is like when he's healthy, he can skate.
Yeah.
So he could be banged up, but could he have a better season? Yeah. But I also, I look at the numbers and I see him play and some issues that he's having. I also don't think he's that player either. So it's somewhere in the middle, but I mean, it's interesting. They have a depth on defense, but then, we look at the injuries and all of a sudden that depth goes really, really south. But, yeah, I'm not sold on Pionk's got to go or Pionk's this or that. I think Pionk can play better for sure. And I think that he deserves some time to sort of get there. But we'll see. Like, and now that you mentioned this, I'll keep a good eye on him tonight in tonight's game for sure and see what he can do against McDavid and the crew there. But I just think that, defense in the NHL, like that, I think we see the greats and they're so consistent, but to me, it's like any other position. Like, defense is you're going to have 15 sort of, I mean, look at Sandberg. I mean, that game against Vancouver, and then look at Heinola, and those are two young players, but Heinola, I thought, on the other side of it played really good. So And then I mentioned already the Morrisseys, the guys have sort of seasons where they're trying to figure out what they should be doing or think they should be doing more or trying to do more than they should. He just looks to me like a guy this year that, like you said, might be banged up a little bit. And then also I think Neil Pionk plays his best hockey when the game comes to him. He's not trying to go do something.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Sandberg because as former Jets bench boss Claude Noel used to love to drop the free pizzas. After that free pizza, I think analytically
that was a New Year's special right there. Here's your free pizza. Enjoy New Year's.
So, but I mean, I think he was, from the analytics, he was the second best Jets player, in that game. So he was able to, bounce back, and that's good because, and that's one of the things I like about Rick Bowness. Look, he doesn't mince words. Like Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet asked him about Jansen Harkins. He's like, he's fine. Like you can tell when he's not in love, like with the way a guy's playing. He's fine. I actually thought Harkins needs a little more of an opportunity. I think if you put Harkins with Scheifele and Lowry, I actually think that there's a little more finishing on that line. Personally, that's my own personal opinion. But the one thing about Rick Bowness is you always kind of have a sense as to what he's thinking. When he's talking about players and that sort of thing. So he'll mention that. But the one thing I liked about it was Sandberg gave up that pizza. I mean, it could have been a dagger because the Jets really couldn't afford to go in a hole that early in the game. And yet he was right back out there, right? He kept them out there the next shift. So you like the fact that he allows his guys to kind of recover from their errors, especially and the one thing is, Jim, and I agree with, it was a point you made earlier, but with Sandberg specifically, he doesn't like his game. He came out of the lineup. A guy doesn't sit in the lineup for 6, 7, 8 games working it out. You come out, there's someone else who's going to try and take your spot. There's that comfort is out. Obviously, guys like Josh Morrissey, huge amount of latitude. But for guys who are trying to establish themselves, and that's what Rick Bowness keeps saying, we want you to seize this role. I don't want to be able to ever take you out, and I want you to have that long leash like a Josh Morrissey, like a Dylan DeMello, like a Neil Pionk, so you can be that guy who has the latitude to make an error in a game or two and not come out the next game.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was with you. I was like, when's he going to play again? And he played right away the next shift. And I'll even go one step further, Dave. I'm sure you saw that, but I think it was later in the period, he made another turnover at his own blue line and it went back the other way on a 2-on-1. And it was another horrific turnover. Now, I shouldn't say as horrific. It wasn't a free pizza right up the middle.
No, but it was bad.
It was a bad play at the blue line that he didn't make when the simple play was there. And it came back the other way for a 2-on-1. And he was actually the guy who got the rebound and got it up the ice. And I thought, okay, well, that's 2 now in this period. I wonder. And right back out there, never made a shift. And so that's good coaching. Like that, I think is a coach that understands that you started rough, you had 2 good shifts, you had another one. Let's see what your next 2 shifts are. And to, Sandberg's credit, he had 2 more good shifts, period ended. And then he's right back out there. And as you said, analytically was the second best defenseman in that game. So that's good coaching by Rick Bowness. And that's what you kind of have to do with those kind of players as well is they're going to make mistakes. And that early and that glaring of one, I think the worst thing you can do is actually bench him. But I also think that if you put him out there for the next 2 and he's awful again, then you consider that. It's a credit to Sandberg that he's at a point in his career where it wasn't devastating to him, because that's a devastating play for a team that's lost 3 in a row, has 7 people out of the lineup. That's a devastating play at the start of the game. The fact that he came back and had 2 more shifts before making another mistake shows that he's okay. There's some balance there. And I think Rick Bowness obviously knows that as well. And I love the way Rick Bowness is approaching this. I'm with you. I think Jansen Harkins is a good player. I think he deserves to be in the NHL. But I also wonder if, and this is just me speculating, because Jansen's a really good guy from what I know of him and a teammate and he doesn't have an ego or anything, but I wonder if he just got comfortable. Okay, I made it. And then he went down, because when I saw him, when that game I went to in the Moose with Stenlund played so well, he was phenomenal in that game. And when he got called up, I was like, well, here you go. And then I thought he was really good for a couple of games when he got into the lineup for the Jets. And then when he got scratched again, healthy wise, I thought, well, I wonder if he's just one of those guys that, okay, the scratch is coming, okay. Because to me, he's a player that he's got to be like Adam Lowry, where you just every shift, this is who I am. This is I'm a third line guy in the National Hockey League if I bring it every single shift. And I just wonder if that's just part of the learning process. Again, I don't think he has an ego of I'm an NHL player now, but I also think that, he's got to remember shift in, shift out what it takes. And I think that Rick Bowness is helping him realize that.
We've got someone who's going to join us now who knows what it takes to shift in, shift out to make it in the pro hockey game. And we're going to be welcoming Nolan Baumgartner, assistant coach of the Manitoba Moose, to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And Nolan, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How's it going? Hey, Tother, how are you?
I'm good, Bomber. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. It's been too long. Well, I see you on the bench when I come to the Moose games and looking dapper as always. But
how come you're not down there banging on the glass? You used to do that.
I used to. Yeah, I'm sure I did. But yeah, it's been too long. When I was Dave asked me to fill in today, and I'm like, Bomber, we should get him on our own show. What's he been doing? How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm really
awesome.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, good to be back in Manitoba.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, really good to be back. It's it was 11 years since we've been back here. I mean, I've been in and out of here, but
right
to have the family back. My son was born here when he was 2, so he was pretty excited to get back and to the place he was born at, and obviously an instant not only Jets fan but Moose fan.
Right. Well, last time I was on Sportsnet Radio in Vancouver, Halford and Bruff were talking about you, and I said I said, does Bomber walk around with little Bomber, the bobblehead still? Because that was my favorite Moose Tracks thing. And the guys in Vancouver are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, never mind, it's an inside joke. So Big Bomber's back here. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
So Nolan, what about that idea of being back in Winnipeg and the transition, and what's it been like for the Moose now as you're approaching the 30-something game mark of your season?
Well, it's been great. Just coming back to this league in itself is such a refreshing time, just to be back with the team here, just to work with these young guys that are hungry to make it to the next level. It's you feel, not that you are coaching in the NHL, but you feel like you're coaching more here, where day in and day out, you do a lot of video with the guys. You're always sitting with individuals and going over there. At least you got the time to watch their whole game with them, their shifts, what they think, what they're seeing out there, what they feel on the ice, and just trying to grow and pass on the knowledge that I've gained over the years, and try to make these guys better players, and ultimately just to make it to the NHL. It's very gratifying when you can coach a couple guys and they get the call up and you get to see them play their first game or whatever, their 30th game, but just to get up to that league and have some success up there is really good. And we got a few guys that have been called up this year that were with us, and they've been doing quite well up there with the Jets. So it's always good to see that.
What's the biggest change? That was one of the things I was excited to talk to you about today, Nolan, was just like, you've gone through this, you've been in both leagues, and you've had seasons where, you were in the A for a year or two, and then you had seasons where you got into the NHL and then back to the A. What's the biggest difference in today's defenseman at the AHL level in your mind from back when you played and what you were going through?
Well, I think just the way the guys nowadays are so much faster. It seems like you always, as the next player, you stand on the bench like, I could probably still play, but you just can't. Like, just way too slow. I actually watched the game from my last year. I have some on DVD, if we know what that is anymore. Sat down and watched, and I just couldn't believe how slow it was. And just the way these guys the skill level, I know we always, you talk about, you watch these World Junior guys play, and the skill level of these players nowadays is so much higher than what we had. These guys have, they try different things that we probably would have never tried back in our day. And they work out sometimes and sometimes they don't. And those are probably the biggest things that we talk to them about. Sometimes you just got to keep the game simple. They want to try things that they see on YouTube and whatnot. So that's probably the biggest change. Just the way they approach the game, how they, the quickness of it, how fast they are. The players nowadays, I mean, they're at the NHL level for sure. They're stronger too. The training, I think, has helped that evolve in the game too.
When I talked to Mark Morrison after the game yesterday, the Moose head coach, and one of the things he was talking about, I asked him about, was how young this team is. And a lot of people don't realize, I mean, you guys are 16-8, 2-1 on the season, but you have an exceptionally young team. And from a coaching perspective, how fun is that to be able to work with these young guys, guys like a Henry Nikkinen, who not a lot of people know, a Daniel Torgerson, and obviously all the young youth on defense, and see how they're making those strides day in and day out to become a better all-around player?
Well, it's great. It's exciting. And that's what makes the job fun. Every day when you wake up, you go to the rink and you got these young guys here and you try to make them better. And what they do is they really take it in. Very coachable. All our players are. We got a really tight-knit group. I think you guys, from what I mean, I didn't know the team from last year, but there's a lot of returning guys and we got some good leadership in that room, and they talked about how tight they were last year. And I feel we have the same type of group this year. And and it is like for how young they are, it seems like they're a pretty mature group. They play quite mature. They're starting to, we're getting on that 30 game mark. They're starting to play like that. They play the same way, no matter what the score is now. Like we're starting to get to that point where before it would just be, hey, I'm going to try to do it myself, or I'm going to just go outside of what we're trying to do. And that just doesn't work. And it doesn't work at any level of hockey. So, our guys are starting to mature that way and get there. And it's really good to see, especially with a young group like that.
I know whether he's with the Moose or the Jets, one of the defensemen that all fans want to see is Ville Heinola and how he's doing. I thought he had his best game as a Jet on Thursday against the Canucks. I'm wondering, I don't want to put you on the spot if you saw it, but maybe Nolan, if you did, do you agree? Like, did you see some certain things that in his game that sort of just came together at the NHL level for him to have such a good game Thursday?
Yeah, no, I did watch it. I thought he played, Ville played with confidence last game, and he got the puck and he wasn't hanging on to it too long. It was on his stick and then it was off his stick, and he just moved it to the first play that he saw. I think in the NHL, that's what you have to do as a D-man. You just don't have that extra half a second or second that you might have in the American League. In the NHL, it's got to be on your stick, and you already got to know what you're doing with it before you get it. And that's what he looked like last game. It just looked like it came together for him, where he was just in the flow of the game, playing like he can, and he had confidence, and that helps a player for sure. That when you get confidence and you're making those plays, and it just snowballs during the game. You make a couple good passes, keep it simple, and I know we talk to all our players about this. It's just you keep your game simple. If things aren't going well, then go back to being simple, and that's not playing, just like I'm just going to shoot it off the glass, but it's just making that first pass. And when you string 5 of those together, now your game gets going, and then you can start to jump up in the play or maybe hang onto it for an extra second and make a play. So that's what Ville looked like to me. And hopefully he can just keep that going, because that's the biggest thing in the NHL is the consistency part. Like, now you've done it for one game. Hey, you got to move on to the next and do it again and again and again. And if you do that, that's what helps you stay in the league.
We're joined by Moose assistant coach Nolan Baumgartner here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Nolan, obviously you haven't had Moose captain Jimmy Olney with you the entire season. He obviously suffered that injury in training during the summer, and he was, I think the projection was sometime around Christmas. Now we know he's back on the ice. What kind of morale, what kind of mood lift did he provide? I know the guys were all excited. Everybody was hooting and hollering when he joined the guys on the ice. But what kind of boost does that provide a team when you have a guy who's as popular as him coming onto the ice? And the second part of that question is, what did you think of his bobblehead? Do you think it looks like him?
Well, your first part, yeah, it was great to have him back. He's been around the team, obviously, here from the start of the year. He's been training really hard, trying to get himself back to play. And then just to get him on the ice with the team the other day was exciting for everybody. I mean, he's the captain of the team. He, he's an engine. He runs. The guys have the utmost respect for him too. You can tell walking around the room. So it's great to have a guy like that back. He's going to obviously brings the leadership part, but I think he brings that when he plays, he brings the competitiveness back to the game. And he's hard nosed. He's probably going to get into a fight here or there. He plays physical, but when you do that, and he's the captain, he just drags the other guys into the fight. And that's going to be good for us to have a guy back like that. Your second part of the question, I did look up at the scoreboard when they announced it yesterday. I don't know if he has as much facial hair as he does now on that bobblehead, but pretty close. Not as good as mine.
No, that's a little bomber was special. That was a good bobblehead, and looked just like you too. That's the important part. You lost last night, obviously, to Abbotsford in a tough one. You play them again this afternoon or later this afternoon. What do you want to change, and what did you make of the game last night?
Well, watching it again, I think just the first period wasn't too bad. I felt like on the bench they were on top of us all the time, but when I watched it over, they really weren't. I think it was our execution in the first period. We just weren't connecting on some passes, and when you do that, we can't establish our forecheck, which is probably the best part of our game, where we can just get pucks just behind their D and go get it, win puck battles. We probably got out battled in that area last night. Usually when that happens, when the other team wins more puck battles than you do, then they tend to end up winning the game. Ultimately in the end is what happened. And I think, just that execution part, when we don't make passes, we can't play fast. And it just bogs you down. Every time we chipped the puck in, we had to change because we were scrambling around a little bit in our own end, and then we were tired, and then we could never get our forecheck established. So having said that, that's what we want to do tonight. We want to put some passes on the tape, execute, manage it, get it in, go get it, get on the forecheck, and hopefully spend more ozone time than we did last night in their own end.
Nolan, one of the things I've noticed, and you're right, this team is an exceptionally tight team. They lost some of the guys, obviously, up to either with the Jets or off waiver. But, one of the things with this group, they're always happy for each other's success. And, that attitude is just clear. I mean, when you'd see it, when a guy would make his NHL debut, 7 guys would be in the press box watching. Or I remember when Jeff Malott made his NHL debut last year, it was in Chicago. And I think the Moose were out east, but everybody was watching, huddled around TV watching, him, because they're happy for him to have that success. Do you find that attitude still permeates? And also I talked to Kevin Stenland after one of the games, and he talked about the idea of the Jets watching and knowing that the teams are watching and how that impacts their play maybe a little bit more, because the GM is in the building, the assistant GM is in the building, and you have those guys watching you on a night in, night out basis.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great. And it looks like the American League's trying to go that way, making their teams closer together with their parent club. And it, to be in the same city, it's definitely an advantage, especially for us down here, to have those guys in the building with Chevy and Zinger being around, and Larry, to have them always watching. Bones is right there. The coaches, they get to see some of the games too. So that does keep the guys on their toes. Absolutely. Going back to what you said, when guys get called up, there is a genuine happiness on our team throughout with their teammates that the guy got called up, and they do watch their players. And, that goes back to our head coach, Mark Morrison, just what he's implemented, how we started the year. I've learned so much in these first couple months from him, and not knowing Mark coming in, on how he got the team prepared, not only just the X's and O's part, but the way he got them together and how he brings them together in the dressing room, and how everybody, it's just everybody's a good teammate in our room. They really are. And it's, you can hear it on the bench during games. Sometimes there's a disagreement or something, but really there's a lot of positive talk that happens on the bench. And for a young team, it's so good to see. And that just, that goes back to Mark just implementing that right from training camp on.
Well, that's why I didn't bang on the glass at the game when I saw you, because I thought Mark would tear my head off and come over the boards after me. I like Mark. He's kind of an old school coach, but understands this new sort of generation of players as well. And I'm not kidding. Like, he's all business when it comes to the game and his practices that I've seen over the years. What's that been like for you to sort of meet him for the first time and then work under him, albeit just for about 30 games?
Well, it's been great experience for myself. You can always, I coached with Travis Green for almost my whole coaching career. I started with Scott Arneal, and just to be with another coach it's so good to see it. It's refreshing, and there's new ideas that you pick up, and you're always learning. And just to be with Mark, just like I said before, some of the things that he has and what we do outside the structure of hockey, and just how we bring guys together and what we do on the road, and to, just certain meetings and what we have. It's really, really, really good. And you're right. He does understand. I think it helps that, he played the game, and he played in a time where it was old school. And I played probably at the tail end of that old school stuff. And yeah, just to have to understand how the players are nowadays, and how they learn, and how he knows how to treat people differently, or, not everybody can be treated the same. You just can't yell at people. And he's really good about that. Always really positive. It's never negative. When you don't play good, like, even we know we didn't play good last night. We'll probably have a few clips to show the guys today, but they're going to be, it's teaching, and it's never tearing guys down. It's to teach these guys, like, if we don't do this, this is what happens, and this is how we look, how we play. But if we do this, then hey, we're going to be great, and we'll show that. And it's just the way he goes about his business. Like you said, he's all business, but he's a real good guy and understanding on how everybody works.
Nolan, one of the things he's implemented, and I think it's kind of refreshing probably for him and for us, is that he allows now his assistant coaches to speak after games. It's a little different. We're not used to seeing it. The Jets, I think, pulled that up from the AHL Moose, but now they'll have their assistants speaking to the media more than they never did that previously. So I think that's kind of an interesting innovation. I don't think it's that Mark doesn't want to talk to me after every single game. I think it's just that he wants to give you guys that experience. But what's it been like for you to be able to have that sort of, it's definitely a change. I don't know if you had that when you were previously coaching, but to me, that's a kind of an implementation for him to say, listen, this isn't just a development league for players. It's also for coaches.
You hit it right on the head. I was just about to, that's how he approaches us as a staff. He gives us those opportunities. And you're right. It's not that he doesn't want to talk to you. He wants us to have the experience of doing an interview or talking about the game right after, because if you're going to be a head coach, you're going to have to do that. And it's just, it is good. It's really, it's a great experience to be able to do an interview before the game or right after the game, and have your thoughts on it. And he's great. Even I do the power play, and he's like, well, here you go, whatever you want. Like, you decide you want to have a meeting at this time. Well, go ahead. You do it. Mm-hmm. And he gives you free reign. He doesn't sit in the meetings and doesn't micromanage me, and he does the same with Eric. So it's really good that way. Even during the game, like, I got to take care of the 6-on-5 on the offensive side of it, and then Eric does the defensive side. But that's our job on the bench. Like, it's just, he's not even taking. He's just like, yeah, you got it. Half the time he did. Well, I shouldn't even say half the time. All the time, he never even asks you if you got it ready. It's just like, he expects it. That's what you do, and it's your job. And then it's really good that way. It gets you prepared if that's what you want to do and move on to be a head coach.
I noticed that with the Jets too, and even Brad Lauer's talking to the media now, which I know he never used to like back in the WHL days as an assistant coach too. But it kind of, I'm wondering if it breeds that kind of, like, what I thought the Jets needed, and not necessarily the Moose. And I know you're the Moose coach, Nolan, but like, sort of this, it's on everybody this year. Like, everybody's involved, and I think when you hear that, it's like a negative connotation. It's not. It's like we're sort of all doing this together. This whole kind of family, Moose, Jets. Coaches are going to speak to the media. It's not just one face. It's kind of this whole, we're all in this together as an entire organization, even at the Moose level.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And that's how you get the buy-in from everybody. And when everybody's involved, everybody feels a part of it. And it's just, and then you're one big family. And there's, it leads right onto the ice. Like you play harder for the guy beside you. You just do. You play harder for your coaches. You play harder for the fans. It's just, that's what happens when you breed that family mentality, and it leaks through everybody up and down the organization. And that's what we do here. And it shows on the ice. It shows on the product in our league with our team. And then it runs right up to the Jets.
No, and everybody wants to focus on Jets prospects generally, and I'm going to ask you about one in a second, specifically for one of our guys in the chat who's always asking about him. But a heartbeat of an AHL team isn't without those role players. And to me, Evan Poli, Nicholas Jones, and Cole Meyer, they're like the lifeblood of this crew. This team story, the way they play, and specifically Cole Meyer. I mean, you can see when he was out that month, the Moose were still obviously performing, but once he came back, the way he performs, I mean, look, if not for that save by Silovs yesterday, it could have been a tie game, even though they had played a pretty solid second period. So what can you say about the roles those three play, and specifically what Cole Meyer has done for this club?
Well, they've been excellent. They were our best line last night, I thought, after watching the game back. Even during the game, they were the ones that, they would get the puck in and go forecheck, and that's their forte. They just they go out. I think their mentality is that we're just going to go out and outwork the other line we're playing against, and most nights they do that. At the start of the year, like you said, Cole was out there for a bit, and Evan and Jonesy, they're trying to find their game a little bit, which they've done now. They're all back together, and they've been real good for us for a good stretch here now. I don't even know, over the last probably 8 games, they've been real good. So, yeah, and that's, when you have that type of line that can just go out there and grind teams, and it helps our other guys, our younger guys see it. Like I said before, like how Jimmy drags guys in the fight, so do they. Yeah. That line, they go out there, they do that, they do the right things. They're not trying to be out there toe drag dangle guys. They play hockey direct. And it's cliche when it's funny when you listen to all interviews. What does everybody talk about? Well, we got to get the puck deep and go forecheck their D. Like, it's just no secret. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, we're not Connor McDavid. We can't beat the whole team. We got to do it collectively and together, and that's what those guys do.
I just have a serious question right now. I just want to know if you ever age, Bomber. You look the exact same as you did 15 years ago.
Well, I don't know. I'm probably cryogenically frozen here from being in Winnipeg all those years. So what do you get?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. No kidding. So you got Abbotsford again this afternoon. Just from a player and a coach perspective, do you like the afternoon games?
Oh, I love it. I think yesterday was our second 7:00 game at home. All year. I love these afternoon games. We usually play at 2:00, so yeah, this is a little late for me. 4:00. No, but we love it. I think the players love it. I always liked it as a player because you just get up, you don't sit around all day. There's no pregame skate and then have to wait all day for the game. I think the players, I think they really enjoy it too. It's just like you get up, you eat, you go around the rink, you get ready, and you go on the ice and drop the puck. And there's not this whole sitting around thinking about that all day. You just go out there and play. And, I think everybody really enjoys it. I know the coaches do too on our side of it, because those are late nights when you play at 7:00 and you get out after the game and you're not a player anymore. You just don't go home and go to bed. You got to watch video and get prepared, especially on a back-to-back when you have a game the next day. So it's late nights for us. So we really like these afternoon games because it feels like after those games, you kind of have a life too, right? You can get home, the kids are to bed, your wife's still up. You can talk to her for a little bit instead of everybody comes home to a dark house and everybody's sleeping. So it is nice for us.
And there should be a lot of excitement for today's game because I believe last I heard it was over 6,000, maybe over 6,500 expected for attendance. So it's going to be a busy one for the Moose. And I mean, we know you've got to get going because you've got the Moose, pregame. The coaches, even though the players don't start right on time, the coaches start a little earlier. But Nolan, I have to ask you because one of our people in the chat is a huge Tyrell Bauer fan. So I mean, he had a big hit along the wall. I mean, he's a young guy. People always ask me, is he ready for the NHL? They saw the fight. They see his goal. I'm like, no. He's a project. He's going to take some time. But what can you say about Tyrell Bauer? So we can satisfy the request from the audience.
Well, you know what? It's when you come into the league, the American League's a tough league to play in. And it's, at times it can be a little more scrambly than the NHL is. There's a lot of players just trying to learn how to play the pro game. And when his first couple of games, he struggled a little bit, but probably over his last dozen games, he's been coming on and really learning the game. He's a student of it for sure. He likes to watch video. He likes to sit down, go over his shifts, look at different things that he can do. He's starting to learn the pro game. And you can really tell in the last few games. And yeah, he's a tough kid for sure. I mean, he's had a couple doozy fights that they're, going back, they're old school fights where he's, just chucking bombs but he's really, and he's physical, that's his game. Like he has to be, but he's really learning how to go back and get a puck quicker. Like just turn and go get it as soon as he gets it on his stick. Like Billy, move it right away. Move it to the first person you see. Like, you're not going to have time to stick handle it twice. Like you could have done in junior. So now he's learning that part of it, and now his game is picking up because of that. He's just going back, be simple, he's not going to scale anybody, to be honest. He's a player that needs to go back as a defenseman, be physical in your own end, and make a good first pass. And that's what he's starting to do. And he's probably a couple years away from the NHL. And you never know, like with players, like I've learned that over my coaching career, you just never know with players. It could just be all of a sudden, bang, the switch goes on or something happens and that's where they're at. But his development's probably going to take a while, but he's starting to go, he's going in a trajectory like that. He's not flatlining and he's not going down, which is good. And that's what we want to see as coaches here.
Well, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Wishing you the best of luck. Maybe you'll get lucky and you get to speak to me twice after the game. Who knows if it'll be you or Eric Dubois. I guess that's we'll find out.
That's like winning the lottery in my books.
Well,
better
thanks
than
very much,
50-50. Good luck today, Nolan. Good seeing you, man. All the best to your family as well.
You too. You guys too. Happy New Year. Thanks.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks very much. That's Nolan Baumgartner, Moose assistant coach. He is joined us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, which is almost over, Jimmy. We only have a few more minutes to go. That was a great chat with Nolan Baumgartner. Always a lot of insight. And like I said, that's one of the things I've liked. One of the innovations Mark Morrison brought in last year was the ability to talk to the assistant coaches. And we were talking, of course, to Eric Dubois and now Nolan Baumgartner. Marty Johnston, of course, was last year, but now he's up with the Jets. And it is funny to see the Jets adopt a Moose tactic, but I don't think it just goes to show you how the organizations speak to each other and how they learn from each other, right?
Yeah, I've noticed it obviously with the Jets more and more. And I made a joke about Brad Lauer because he was an assistant coach with the Ice when I was in Cranbrook covering them, and we've kept in touch over the years and everything else. But I noticed that, on Arneal as well, and know him from the Moose days. Now we see Bomber. It's just like it's funny how the hockey world works and these relationships you build or people you get to know. But it does stand out to me that Johnson and Lauer and Arneal speaking to the media. And I don't think at all it's Bonus not wanting to speak to the media. It's just a part of we're all in this. And I think that's especially at the Jets level. I think that's what the whole removing of the captaincy and not having one this year is just that it's a fact of bringing us all in and making us part of the sort of we're all in this together and we all are, no one, I think of what it speaks to a lot, Dave, and maybe from the Moose even so is it's not all about me and my direction. It's about us and our direction.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So, Jim, we don't have a lot of time left, but I mean, and you kind of highlighted this a little bit, but we'll go back to it. Let's end the 2022 year talking about maybe your best Jets stories of the past calendar year.
Oh, wow. The best stories. I mean, I think Josh Morrissey's sort of play this year and just given that, we know what he went through the year that his father was ill and then passed away is huge. I really like the Mark Scheifele sort of story. The Blake Wheeler tale too. Like, I don't know, if you can have a conversation with Blake sometime this year, I would love to get him on the air and just sort of have a discussion with him on the fact that, but I think it's a discussion at the end of this year of, you're never going to not want to help the team. And that includes being the team's captain. But I thought it was something that weighed on Blake. And I thought it was something that had become, not a negative burden, but a burden to sort of run. I think he's at that stage of his career. And I thought he was going to have a really good year this year with just being alleviated from the daily duties of a captain. I think that's a story. But to me, when I was thinking about this yesterday, Dave, the biggest storyline is the fact that you ran this team back and they are as good as I thought they were last year, despite the results. I had this team being a top 10 team in the National Hockey League last year. And for various reasons, I was wrong about that, obviously, with the season they had. I think the story of the year in the world of pro sports, of screaming for change and changing coaches and changing players, the fact that when they looked at it and tried to change this team, decided that this team was the best team they could have without making major moves. And then to see them be this successful this early, that's hard to do. And it takes great hockey minds and great people to look at their organization, see the season they have had, and then decide that, these are our options and these aren't going to make us better, that this is a good team and we believe in it. I think that's the story of the year for me, given the fact, and you had to have that season last year in order for this to be the story of the year. But that to me is what it is. That and a close second is bonus.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that, it's amazing, Jim. Like, we never really had much of a summer this year because it was like coach watch. And like, obviously Barry Trotz, the whole lead up to that after, the way the season ended. And then, of course, to get Rick Bowness and, the initial kind of like sad sound, like, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's he going to be able to do? And what he's been able to do is really breathe a lot of life back into this organization with players that, again, you said it, are all, and the coaching staff will always say it's not them. Josh Morrissey isn't having a career Norrisy type of season because of, Rick Bowness or even the words. I mean, maybe that definitely helped. But he would always say Josh Morrissey, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Connor Hellebuck, Kyle Connor, which Kyle Connor is forgotten about because he doesn't have like 50 goals already. But, his play has been, I mean, there's a reason why, again, we always tend to have kind of blinders on with Kyle Connor for his goal scoring. If he's not scoring like, he's not the premier goal scorer on the team, it's like, what's going on? It's like, well, look at his assists, right? And look at him his career. He's got 193 goals, but I think he's got 191 assists. So the guy really does produce at both ends, and because he is such a lethal passer. So I just think there's so many things that are pulling this team all in the right direction. I definitely think Rick Bowness was the right guy. And again, I didn't have any particular insight one way or the other. I wasn't like, I didn't think that I think you can see, like, look at Mark Morrison. Your comments to Nolan Baumgartner are right. These guys are old school, but they can reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
And some guys will never do it. Some people tell me this guy won't even look at a book, if it's analytics or whatever, they won't even look at it. But there's other guys who are older, but they have no problems, adapting and evolving and bringing new things into their game. So I think Rick Bowness probably is the story, the ultimate kind of the key story. But then again, there's all these trailers that, you have to mention because they're all phenomenal stories in their own right.
Well, and I'll be quick, but if you think back to the names, like
Jim, just so you know, there's no time limit. It's only you. It's you and I, my niece's birthday party, but we can go however long we need to. Well, Drew, no Ezzy. Well, Ezzy's always fine to go a little long. It's more Drew that we'd have to worry about.
I ramble on this show too, but I'll try to be quicker. I just look at the names after Barry Trotz. And Rick Bowness wasn't one of them for me. Like, I thought Bowness maybe as an assistant, but I also heard that he was done being an assistant and ready to retire at 67. Like, he didn't want to sort of go to an uncontending team or a rebuild. But Jim Montgomery was at the forefront for me. When people asked me, I was like, and you look what he's doing in Boston. But now I think it's a credit to the organization here at the Jets, because I wonder if Jim Montgomery would be able to do this with what this team needed to be done off the ice. Like, he's great in Boston, and look at the season they're having. But that was a team that wasn't in chaos. That was a team that had its veterans and knew what they are, and maybe needed a new system or something to do what they were doing. And he's obviously going to be up for Coach of the Year, Jim Montgomery. So it wasn't a bad option. But to sort of, when the Trotz thing said that he wasn't going to coach, to go to bonus, sort of delve into what was going on with this team and what they needed, and to have him come in with his philosophy. And I still go back to the fact that at 67, he has a 2-year deal. So that tells me that he's not in this for another contract. He's not in this for another, didn't get the standard 3-year deal a new coach gets. To me, it speaks to a guy who goes, I like your team. I think they're really good and better than what I saw. And I think I can get them in a direction that they needed to go. I wonder if, say, 2 years ago, Rick Bowness is brought in, he's having this success. If the players themselves, without having gone through the year last year, would be receptive to what kind of stance and how Rick runs the team and the shorter leash. But to me, it just screams of a guy that's come into the right fit at the right time, and he's done a great job of the whole idea of, this isn't a negative place. This is what we're doing. Let's go do this. But if you don't want to be on board, I don't have time for you. But if you do want to be on board, we can do a lot of great things. So I just think that, like, that's a big part of it. Because I think of the names that were out there, and Bowness wasn't one of them. Jim Montgomery was, when people asked me, I was like, Montgomery's a great coach. Look what he's doing in Boston. But I think Rick and his philosophy at this stage of his career is exactly what the team needed.
Well, I think you're exactly what this show needed, Jim, because you've been a phenomenal co-host with me, and people are saying in the chat, Ezzy who, Drew who, Jim Toth all the time.
They're saying, when are they back? And it's next week or tonight, actually.
Well, we hope tonight. We hope one of them will be back tonight, and then on Tuesday, both of them will be back. It's been a fast Illegal Curve Hockey show. Went like this, Jimmy, but we appreciate you joining us here on the show. And again, there's plenty of content still to come your way on illegalcurve.com. We'll, of course, have everything from the Moose and Canucks game, the classic New Year's Eve game, which, again, 6,500 people, I think, are expected. So should be a lot of fun. A lot of folks from Winnipeg or Manitoba will be at the game to watch the Moose. The Jets of tomorrow today, and they'll get that chance. And, of course, some folks will be going to the Ice game to see the Ice and the Blades. Their rematch, Winnipeg won yesterday 2-0. That's a battle of first versus third in the Eastern Conference of the WHL. And, of course, later tonight, the Jets and the Oilers do battle at 9 o'clock. And you can join us on the little thing called the Illegal Curve postgame show. That will hopefully be me. That will hopefully be Ezzy. We're not 100% sure, of course, if that's going to be the case. We're hoping. So and I want to thank Jim, but I also have to thank all of our sponsors who make the Illegal Curve show, the postgame show, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. They are Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rollies Transfer, and Grid Park. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. So, Jim, I want to thank you very much again for joining us. Thanks, Frosty, for putting up that in the chat. We know who all the Frosty, Jim, not only does he put who the sponsors are, but he also tells us who the comedian is, Kevin Bozeman, who's got 2 shows tonight at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club.
That's
so if you want to know what's going on, Frosty Winnipeg always has in the chat. He'll always give you the insight as to who the comedian is going to be at Rumors.
Great stuff. Yeah. And thanks to all your sponsors too. Thanks for having me. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. Get out and watch some live hockey today, Moose or Ice, whatever you want to do. It's a great way to spend New Year's, especially that Moose game is always a blast on New Year's Eve. I remember those back in the day, covering them and just even attending a few. And then you got Jets hockey tonight. So happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for having me, Dave. Happy New Year to the other 2 of the crew as well, and everybody listening and watching.
Well, thanks, Jim, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We are back tonight with the Illegal Curve post-game show, so enjoy your Saturday, whatever you choose to do, and we will talk to you again very soon.